G'day everybody, and welcome to the Risky Rollers podcast. I'm Dalton, and I'm joined by Lockie.
Hello.
And also by Bailey.
Hey!
Returning for your first time back. Today we are going to be discussing the Tower. You've had a bit of recent success with them at a local RTT.
Mm-hmm.
Lockie has had mixed results with them recently, and I've been going through the book and sort of checking it out. So we're gonna.
I think it's mixed.
You guys.
It's mixed result, not mixed results.
Yeah. by which we mean
a bad result.
Yeah.
It's like just one lost game.
Yeah,
just
pretty much.
Horrifically lost. It wasn't
Yeah,
good.
it was horrible. I was just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, I think I know what I'm doing, but I have no idea what I'm doing.
I think you did. I think it was the dice that bad touched you there.
Well, I don't like you blaming that. I feel like that's just a cop out. But it's true.
Anyway, before we get into all of that, if you want to get any Tau stuff or any other hobby stuff for that matter, make sure to check out Dice Arcade. You'll hear a bit more from Tim a bit later in the episode. If you want to chat with us about all the Tau stuff, there's a whole bunch of Tau players in there, as well as several of us getting into it, and several veterans there as well. Jump into our Discord and hang out with us, talk Tau, talk everything else, and just have a great old time. It's a bit of great stuff happening in there. You can also support us on Patreon, which we always appreciate. And you can, if you're listening to us on Spotify or your podcasting platform of choice, give us I think it's a review on Spotify,
yes,
or a like or whatever it is, wherever you're listening to us, be it there or somewhere else. It does really help us out, helps us get picked up by the algorithm a bit.
That one's super important.
Good.
Yeah, that one's super important. Please, everybody.
But yeah, without any further ado, let's crack right on. Tau, book is not really new anymore, but it's kind of new for Lockie and I. Bailey, you've had some time with it. Your first thoughts?
Yeah, so it's still kind of new to me. I think this is 4 or 5 games that I've played with it now, including the recent RTT I went to. I took it down to my local game store for our typical game night, and just absolutely decimated this very new orc player, and it was brutal. Just absolutely, turn 1, half of his army is dead. Turn 2, just fully tabled. I killed Gaz with a Cold Star Commander, with an Onager Gauntlet in melee.
Yeah, in combat. I was going to ask in combat. That's awesome.
So it's that would be awesome in a tournament, when it's someone who's just brought their chill orc army to a Thursday night game, and it's just I'm so sorry about this. It's a new book. I didn't realize it was like this. It's kind of okay, this is a tournament only book at this stage, unless you really skew out of it. But that's probably the main takeaway that I have. Despite your, misfortunes with dice, I find the book to be really, really strong front to back, to the point where it's people have been talking about nerfs, and I guess we'll get into that a bit later on. And it's that'd be fine. You could nerf half the book and it would still be a great book. It might not be S tier or whatever, but it would still be super strong, and still be a lot of fun to play, I think. And that's the big takeaway for me, is just because I have been playing Tau throughout 9th. I play a lot of different armies, and I have played Tau quite a few times at various tournaments before their new book. And I've got to say, it's night and day, not just in the power level, but just in how you can actually approach the game. Your mobility is so much better. Your ability to respond to and react to what your opponent is doing is so much better. Your scoring is just off the charts. And obviously, you can just completely destroy your opponent in shooting. It's unreal.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're all really good signs, especially I think one of the key positive takeaways, even with some would argue as a broken book, is that you could nerf half of it and still be good. That's a good thing to hear.
Exactly. It's not like Codex Hive Guard or something where it's, I'm going to load up on 18, or Codex Ruckatrug Squig Buggies or Admech Planes or something like that. It does feel more like Drakari, where it's, we're in the Dark Technomancer stage, or the Obsidian
Cult of
Rose
Strife.
or whatever it was. Yeah, Cult of Strife. And it's cool, that's going to get nerfed tomorrow or something, is the rumor, and or it might already be nerfed by the time this podcast comes out. But then people will just pivot to, the next cool stuff in the book. So
yeah.
So
which, I mean, is probably not the worst place for a book to be. If it's a little bit too strong, you can tone it down a bit. And as you mentioned, that like the entire book feels good to play.
Yeah.
Which means that you can tone the entire book down just a little bit and just bring it down into the area where it's fun to play against as well. And you'll have a really, really quality army.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously the things that are not fun to play against it, in my opinion, having played into it a couple of times as well, is just the mass indirect is...
Yeah, the SMS are a bit of a problem.
Yeah, the SMS, I feel, are okay. The air-bursting fragmentation launcher, or whatever it's called, is a real problem. And I've played against a Tau force that didn't have any of the AFBs, and I've played against an army that did, and I've obviously, in the recent tournament that I went to, I took mass airbursting, and it's insanity. It takes SMS and dials it up to 11.
Can you just quickly give people a rundown on what that is and how it's used and why it is kind of, I guess, oppressive in your opinion? And
yeah, so I'm actually just going to double check what the actual
I have
name
the
of the gun is, because I always forget what it's called.
You're saying it right, airburst fragmentation launcher, or projector.
Airbursting fragmentation projector. 24-inch range. Assault D6, strength 4, -1 AP and 1 damage. It's blast, and it can target units that are not visible to this unit. So it's your indirect fire, chuck some flak into the air, explodes and showers down all sorts of shrapnel on people.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the lore of it. And SMS is obviously the smart missile system, which is strength 5, AP 1 damage, but with a 30-inch range, I believe. And it's usually found on bigger battle suits, like your broadsides or your riptides, or on vehicles.
Yeah, so all your vehicles can take 2 of them on their drones. And since you're already taking a lot of Devilfish and things, and broadsides, they're so easy to fit into a list.
Yeah, exactly. They usually come in pairs. So, for instance, the broadside version of the SMS is actually called a twin smart missile system, which is heavy 8. So that's a lot of shots. And my RTT list had 4 broadsides with SMS and rail rifles. So
So the other thing that they do as well, the SMS also ignore light cover.
Yep.
So I'm gonna. So reading over the profiles there, by the sound of it, the only reason that the airbursting fragmentation projectors have a bit more of the bad feels to them seems to be because they're a bit easier to get onto the table. You can put them on crisis suits.
Yeah, they're very, very cheap.
Smart missile systems are longer range. They'll average more shots, only about 0.5 of a shot. But they're also higher strength, and they have the light cover thing. But looking at hold on, I'm going to check out the points differential as well. For you're paying 10 points for your first airbursting fragmentation projector.
Yeah,
that's 5.
That's 5. 5, 10, then 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. That's the commander data sheet there. But yeah, you're right. 5, 10, and 20.
Okay.
So it's your 5 there, and then you're paying 5 points for a smart missile system, but they have to be on a larger chassis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even that in of itself, right? So even when you go, and I'm not disagreeing with you at all in this situation, but I look at that profile, go, okay, and I take my rolling into account. I go, right,
Yeah.
D6 shots. I'm probably gonna roll a 2, whatever.
Yep.
Strength 4, neg 1. It's not that oppressive. So I'm obviously with a Tau, and throughout the book there are multiple ways to buff things. So obviously there's a synergy in there that makes it oppressive. So what are a few of the ways that it becomes I guess a problem or powerful?
So the first one is Montcar, which for people who aren't familiar with the Tau book is now a kind of like your doctrines or whatever. But Montcar applies for turns 1, 2, and 3. In turn 1, the range of Montcar is 18 inches. In turn 2, it's 12. Turn 3, it's 9. And essentially, if you target the closest unit within that range, you get an extra point of AP, and you get to re-roll 1s to wound. So, straight off the bat, you're getting AP2 on your airburst in turns 1, 2, and 3, pretty reliably. Crisis battlesuits naturally move 10 inches. There's a strat, a 1 CP strat to auto-advance 6 inches. Oh, and Monkar allows you to move and advance and counters remaining stationary into the shooting phase. It's important. So you can essentially move 16 unabated, or if you've got a Cold Star in your list, you can give the Cold Star buff to Crisis, which allows them to auto-advance 8. So you can move 18, shoot 18 to get that neg-2. The second side of the, I guess, like power ramping up is Exemplar of the Montcar, which is a Warlord trait, which is then a buff that's applied in the command phase to a any core unit, which then allows them to reroll all wound rolls as long as they're targeting something within 9 inches or 12 if you selected Montcar. So if you're in Montcar and you can get within 12, you can then be hitting on 3s with the Marklight support, or even just hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, potentially re-rolling everything if you've got Shadow Sun with you, who is the new Supreme Commander, and then wounding on 4s or 5s or 6s even, depending on what you're going into, and then re-rolling everything again with AP2. Then there's another stratagem called Coordinated Engagement, so if you do this with 2 different Crisis Battlesuit teams, and they can both see, they both target the same unit, they'll increase their AP by another point. So yeah, it's very easy to pump up that AP, at least to neg-2, even all the way through to neg-3. But even at just AP1 is super, super strong. Because then the third part of the loadout is you can add in target lock to all of your Crisis, which means that they ignore cover. So if you've got something standing behind a wall, getting a +1 to their save, it's like you both ignore that +1, and then you're minusing 1 naturally, potentially minusing 2, minusing 3.
Yeah. You can get that up to a 3, and essentially a -3 AP, or a functioning one, quite easily.
Yeah. And if you're super, super worried about it, you can... I have been playing Tau Sept, but people have been playing, I think, Farsight Enclaves is and we'll get into Farsight Enclaves, I guess, as well. But with Tau, at least, there's another stratagem that allows you to, once you've taken a wound off something.
Oh no.
No, that's a general one, and then there's the Farsight version of it as well. The Tau one allows you to get +1 2 wound as well. So you can be going up from a common against anything strength 5 and up. You'll be wounding on 5s. You can then go to wounding on 4s, rerolling everything again. So it's a massive amount of damage that you can just drop out of line of sight, and then you use your strike and fade stratagem for 1 CP to move an additional 6 inches after you've shot, or you've got them buffed up with Sense of Stone from an Ethereal so that they've got a 5-up, feel no pain, or you've got them running around with 5 shield drones, so they've got 5 4-up invulnerable saves that they have to chew through before they can even get to dealing with the Crisis unit.
And this is after they've maneuvered in such a way they can actually see the Crisis unit. Yeah,
exactly, because you can just do all this from, behind a wall, behind obscuring terrain. It's nuts.
Interesting. It's interesting to see the shift as well. So you mentioned that they were kind of like Drukhari, where you go, everything internally together is fairly well balanced. It's just that there's this external sort of power level difference with the other books.
Yeah.
It's interesting to look at that and go, how much support you need to make it oppressive, like CP and other system support.
Yeah, so it's overlapping buffs, right? And that's what takes exactly. What sounds like a pretty average profile of D6 strength 4 AP1 1 damage.
Yeah.
And suddenly it goes, holy shit, this is a serious problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's interesting to note that that's where the problem seems to come in for it. Whereas with Drukhari, it was the base data sheets were just too cheap, or too.
Or the strats were too cheap for what they did. But no, it's right.
With Drukhari, is you didn't need the strats to make them oppressive. You didn't need the support to make them impressive. It just dialed it up even further.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the good things why people aren't that, and That's one of the reasons why I look at it going, well, it's not that bad. After hearing you explain it, Bailey, going, well, yeah, there's not only general ship involved, but there's also memory and investment, i.e. stratagems and list writing, right? So it's not just straight line linear power that you just get this. So I think that those bad touches, in my opinion, aren't really that bad because you've worked for it as an opponent. The opponent's worked for us. You go, okay,
sure. So now let's talk about Farsight enclaves and probably the more boogeyman side of this, which is allied Farsight.
Yeah, where you can get the ethereals.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, obviously you've got all of your different sept tenets, and they work like your different chapters within the Space Marine book. So, Tau Sept is one of the most common ones. You've got Sarcia, you've got Viola, so a couple of other ones in there, and then you have Farsight Enclaves, which has always been the up close and, kind of like the combat Tau kind of style. It doesn't fight any good still, but that's kind of the vibe it goes for.
But hey, if you ever want Chaos Tau, that's the nearest you're going to get.
Sure. I'm not going to get into the lore on that.
I think it's also fan favorite. I think a lot of people, as well, especially in previous editions, myself included, the reason why I think people liked Farsight more is because it played similarly to kind of what the OG Tau was supposed to play like, kind of like how the whole book functions now. But back then it was kind of the only one that enabled you to do that kind of fast hit and run style, plays, which kind of what seemed to make it popular.
Yeah, for sure. So, the big thing with Farsight in 8th was it allowed you to take 2 commanders, and commanders were your best shooting platform per detachment. Yeah. And that's still the case. So, commanders are detachment locked. You can only have 1 per detachment, unless you're playing Farsight, and then you can have 2. The trade-off for that is you can't take an ethereal, which is essentially a chaplain, right? Gives you additional buffs in your command phase. And those
better powers.
Ethereal buffs...
with better liberties.
Yeah. Those ethereal buffs are super strong. As I said, there's one that just gives a unit a 5-up Feel No Pain, and that goes off on a 2 with the Humble Starve Relic. There's one...
So you've got character ethereals for several different septs as well that innately have it go off on 2s.
I think Anshi or Anvi or whatever his name is.
Anshi and Anvar probably both do.
Yep.
Which... Yeah, I think, they're both on a 2-up, and then, you got a relic to get a base ethereal to it. But they're on a 3-up to begin with, which is already better than Chaplain.
No, Chaplain's go off on a 3.
Chaplain's base 3.
Oh, not at 4?
No.
It's
the Master of Sanctity gets it to a +1.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
All right.
But you still got that relic to get on a 2-up.
So if you play Allied Farsight, which is essentially like being a successor chapter of like the Blood Angels or whatever, it allows you to take an ethereal in your list.
Sorry,
so you can still...
How does that work with the recent change to not being able to run detachments from more than one subfaction?
So you're still one subfaction. So essentially it is like a custom sept.
Oh, right. But you choose all the things from the main sept.
Yeah. So the same way you can have like a custom... Yep. Like if you play Blood Ravens, it would be a custom Blood Angel sept. So you would technically be a Blood Angels successor chapter. And then you just have all the Blood Angels rules, but you get to say, these are my Blood Ravens. That's kind of what Allied Farsight does.
Gotcha.
But the difference is, so you get all of the Farsight rules. I'm pretty sure it still turns off the double commander thing, but I'm not 100% the wording on that.
No, you still get it. Well, everyone's been playing it that you still get it.
That you still get double commander? Cool, because you also then get an ethereal for some reason, which is bonkers. So essentially it just means that you get all of Farsight advantages and none of the Farsight disadvantages. And the main reason why you want to play Farsight is because of the stratagem, which is drop zone clear. It's nuts. So essentially, I'm just going to read this verbatim. Use this stratagem in your movement phase when a Farsight Enclave's battlesuit unit from your army is set up on the battlefield using the Manta Strike ability or the Homing Beacon action. Until the end of the turn, each time a battlesuit model in that unit makes a ranged attack, you can reroll the hit roll and you can reroll the wound roll. If that unit contains 4 or more battlesuit models, the stratagem costs 3 CP, otherwise it costs 2 CP. So it's often going to cost you 3, because you want to be dropping in like a big blob of crisis, like 5 is a pretty solid number that I'd see. Although you can also do this with crisis bodyguards in smaller units, still be just as good. But yeah, rerolling all your hits, all your wounds. You might think, all right, cool. I mean, at least you're still coming in, 9 inches away. Maybe we can screen you out, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we just went over the range that they have for all of their, air bursting and everything. So you're not ranging that out. Oh, you're not screening that out, I should say. They're going to be able to drop down and shoot whatever the hell they want. Rerolling all hits, rerolling all wounds. It's just insanity. And that can come in on turn 1 with the homing beacon. So there's so much stuff in this book. The homing beacon is something that stealth suits do now. And essentially they start an action, they can do it in turn 1. And then in your movement phase, the homing beacon goes off and something can drop in within 3, I think it is, of the homing beacon. And then 9 inches away, typical deep strike rules.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like the homing beacon's a useful thing again.
Yeah, it's dope. It's such a cool rule, but it just because it now works with that stratagem, it's super, super powerful because you can do it turn 1. Which means if you have 2 stealth teams, which are pretty cheap with the homing beacon and full kitted out with drones as well, that would be around 100 points. And they can forward deploy, so they can be anywhere on the board. You can essentially have crisis teams dropping in turn 1, activating this ability, activating drop zone clear, and just going nuts straight away. It basically gives you... It's kind of like having the GSE, or a drop pod, yeah. They're absolutely... You start them off the board, no worries. You have no fear of anything.
Yeah. It's a pseudo drop pod. Oh, yeah, Tau's version of a drop pod or whatever. Yeah. And it's cool. Yeah. It's super fluffy. I mean, Dalton, that was the intention of how to use it on the weekend. Yeah.
So you'll all see in the game that came out, in the battle report that came out today. In fact, look, we're probably going to mention what happens in that. So go watch that battle report and then come back to the podcast because we will mention it a few times because it's kind of relevant to this.
Yeah.
So
I play. Yeah.
You guys go and watch that.
You done now? Cool.
Yeah. Now you've done that. We're gonna come back in here.
So I used that, right? And I used it, built the unit, and I think it is super powerful. Obviously, it is when it's used right. Obviously, I had to use it on the back foot, whatever. But and I'd built the list, and I think one of the cool things about this stratagem, from what I saw anyway, is that it doesn't really limit you. Sometimes if you build a unit for a purpose, you're like, oh, well, how do I buff it? How are we doing this? You can be just like, all right, I want entire plasma, or I want entire fusion, or whatever, with the 1 shots or whatever, or the 2 shots here and there.
Yeah. And you pay a bit more for that, but you're also then getting a lot more efficiency out of it too.
No, I know, but I mean, with this stratagem, having full rerolls to hit and wound, you mitigate the, I can just load up now, because you're not really worried that, you can guarantee whatever you're going to touch, you're going to probably kill, really, more or less. Granted, we took 13 wounds off an avatar.
12 wounds, please. He had 2 left at the end.
Oh, did you have 2 left? Damn it.
Yeah.
Whatever. He had 2 left. After each one being halved, right?
Yeah,
mind you.
Halving all that, and I had to spend two
fate
strands
dice.
of fate dice to keep it alive.
There you go. But,
But still...
You want that thing to die.
You do. And, realistically, you should probably count on an Eldar player using strands of fate to keep something like the Avatar alive.
Yes. So it's super powerful, and I think, I think it's cool. I think it is cool. It is pretty bad touchy as well, though, being to a turn 1. But, I mean, look, drop pods are bad touch anyway. That's just kind of the nature of how they work. So is that your favorite sept? Kind of. If we're
I love Tau Sept. Tau Sept is definitely where I'm at the moment. I think I don't think it's stronger than that particular jankiness, but I think it's more consistent and has more consistent value throughout the game, rather than trying to throw everything down into 1 or 2 big crisis bombs that just blow up the world. I still think that's probably the strongest way to do Tau at the moment, but yeah.
So while we're on this subject, let's actually take a look at a couple of septs. You've mentioned Tau a few times, so let's actually...
Sure.
I'll very quickly go over what they do, and let's have a bit of a chat about the way the septs sort of work in general. So the septs are just your chapters, essentially. They're your different sub-factions of Tau, and you pick one and you get all the benefits and restrictions that go along with it. So for Tau, their Sept Tenet, their chapter tactics, as it were, is every time they shoot a fight, they can reroll 1 hit or 1 wound roll. So like a pseudo salamander reroll. So that's great. They get 3-inch extra on their range of aura abilities. That's kind of fun. And then each time they use... And then it specifies this also works on something that's not an aura, but kind of should or could be an aura that has a range, or an ability that has a range. Things like your invocation or other abilities, you still add 3 inches to that as well. Which is an interesting thing. So I'm not sure that they've done that or had to make that specification before. I think they've just left it as, I guess it doesn't work on that.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the main reasons that I love Tau Sept, is that extra 3 inches on auras, but also on invocation abilities and command abilities that the crisis commanders can pass out. Because
actually, now that I think about it, I think one of the Necron command protocols does actually specify, but it does specific abilities. It says it also works on this, and this ability.
Like works on Hand of the Pharaoh or something like that.
Exactly. Works on My Will Be Done, works on something and something else that aren't auras, but have that same thing. But this is general. Any ability in your command phase that specifies a range, you add 3 inches to that.
Mm-hmm. Just remember, we should never ever reference anything to the Necron Codex. Purely, not because it's anything against Necrons. I mean, I do, but aside from that,
they're just irrelevant at this point.
That was a test book.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly believe that was their test book for their future of moving forward, and it's, yeah. I
mean, I think we've had this conversation before, that I think you're right, and I'll come around to it watching all the books come out. I think you're right, is that they're writing them sequentially as we go, which is fucking dumb.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But nonetheless, that was something they tested in that book, and then I don't think they've ever touched on it again, where this kind of a range extension ability extends to something other than an aura.
Yeah. And I want to mention why this is so powerful in Tau. Yep. It's not just because a lot of these auras now suddenly go up to being 12 inches because they're already extended. It's because crisis teams, again, and even broadside teams, riptides, whatever, anything that can take drones is pretty much already on a relatively giant base. And then the drones don't count towards coherency, but they do count towards the footprint of the unit.
Oh, what? Do they?
Yeah, do they not count... Hold on a minute.
That's stupid.
So I personally, in my RTT, was playing them as if they did count towards coherency, because that just makes more sense to me. But that's the way I'm seeing it. It's the same as that 2 commander things where people are like, oh, it doesn't explicitly say.
Yeah. If you can't, and they're right, like rules is written, that's how they want us to play it, so we play it as such, unless you're in a tournament that rules alternate, like the TO at their discretion to rule otherwise, or obviously you have a conversation with your friend when you're playing, but rules is written, of course, go ahead with it. I would be that'll be get FAQ'd, of course.
Sorry, very quickly, where is that about ignoring coherency?
It's in the drone section.
The drone says they ignore lookout, sir, they ignore starting strength and half strength.
That's the one that makes them ignore coherency. Toughness. Ignoring starting strength. Coherency is based on the starting strength, I think. It's the rules that I'm seeing. As I said, I was playing them as if they do apply coherency rules, because I think that's the way it's intended to. But even with them, even using coherency, if you've got 5 crisis and 5 drones, you can string out a long way and still have coherency.
I imagine you would still need them, at least the way I'm seeing it to be intended, you would still need them to be in coherency, but you wouldn't count the unit as having more than 5 models if 5 of them are drones, for example. I feel like that might be the intention there.
Yeah, that's how I'm seeing it as well. It's like, the models still have to be in coherency. They're still models in the unit, but...
Yeah, you don't count it as part of the whole... do they have 5 or more models to start with? Yeah.
But as you say, though, that footprint becomes massive.
Yeah.
And it should be one way or the other, right? It either doesn't affect coherency and therefore it doesn't, tap your buffs over, or it does and it does. Or whatever. You can't have it one way and not the other, which obviously other people are trying to do. So, man, that's crazy. That's crazy good. Because you're probably getting 3 inches from the drone to the... where you can be able to get 3 inches from the drone to the broadside or whatever it is that you're doing, and then you're going to increase... Or if you're
running 2 or more drones, then you're getting 6 inches from that unit back to wherever it is that your character is.
That's super
it also counts if your character has drones, the aura goes from the drones as well, because it goes from the unit, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
And if you've got a character with 2 drones, they can have to be within 2 inches of each other. They can fan out quite a ways. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. So that's pretty cool.
That's annoying.
The Warlord trait for Tau is up Feel No Pain. So on a 5, you ignore a lost wound.
I'm assuming you're never taking that, right? That's a bit of a waste. Yeah.
Compared to the other ones in the book, yeah. But on its own, it's not bad. Then you've got their signature system, which is like their relic, is the vectored maneuvering thrusters. So you add 2 inch to their move characteristic, kind of cute. And then once per battle round, when it's selected as a target of a charge and it's not within engagement range, it can make a normal move. And then you cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend, and your opponent can redirect the charge. That's fantastic.
yeah, that's very useful. If that's something that you want to do.
Yeah.
Well, stopping people from charging you, right, is obviously good.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that Tau have is a 1 CP any battlesuit can just add 2 to any charge. So you kind of, I mean, depending on where you are when that gets declared, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it almost seems like this then becomes, well, you can have this to sort of kite a charge out. This one, fucks off behind your Fire Warriors or whatever it is, and making the charge already, 3-4 inches longer. Then let's say they do redirect, well, then you're spending a CP to make that charge another 2 inches longer.
Yeah, so the way I'd probably want to play this is with some, like, again, I'd be looking at using this as just free movement in general. So, for instance, you'd be using it to get onto a point that you couldn't get onto or something like that. Or, get back into cover where it's relevant. But I think that, because this would... So signature systems aren't like relics, they're sort of separate. Oh, no, actually, I think the signature systems are technically relics.
I think it's the prototype systems of the points upgrades.
They're the free ones, yeah.
But there's too many other good relics, is kind of what I see. And there is one that kind of does this. It's called the Bagel Hunter or something like that. What am I looking for here?
Just while we're searching for these, I will confirm that they have not fixed the layout of the books. They are still horrendously disorganized.
Every time I open this book, I open it Crusade rules. So.
It's
They want people to play Crusade. That's the thing.
No, I think that's the only one that does it. Cool. Well, I mean, that is a great relic. Like, it is really cool, especially on something like a Cold Star or an Enforcer that's like going to be a bit more out the front.
That said, I think the one you might be thinking about is the Multi-Sensory Discouragement Array, which is a fantastic name for a relic.
That is actually a really good name.
Which is, at the end of a movement phase, you roll 3d6 against someone's leadership. However, one of the results for that is you halve move and charge rolls for them.
Yeah, and they lose OBSEC, which is huge.
Yeah. Well, you choose one of them to have an effect.
Yeah.
So they lose OBSEC, or they halve move and charge, or they can only target the closest unit with a ranged attack. But that's your other way to really mess about with enemy charges.
Yeah, true. So, and there's also something that Pathfinders can do with their pulse grenades or something like that. So there's a couple of ways to drop or to extend the range of other people's charges, which really makes trying to deep strike against Tau difficult.
Yeah.
But I mean, the big thing about this one is just not being able to fire Overwatch. And if you've got a commander or a HQ unit that's kind of in a spot where they could get charged and it's going to be meaningful to the game, you would want to, like, I would hope at least, that you'd sort of set them up to be able to tank a charge, either with drones or with solid melee, like the Onager Gauntlet, or the... Yeah. I'm not going to be able to say the name of this stupid flamer. The special flamer.
I said it. I said it for our thing because I took it. It's a thermoneumatic...
You can do it.
I just can't remember it. It's not in front of me. Thermoneumatic... Nowhere! No!
I'm trying to find it. It's... I have no idea where it is in the book.
Data sheet.
It's a relic.
No, it's not. It's the prototype systems.
Oh, it's the prototype system. Sorry, you're right.
Are not relics, so you can have relics and them, which, again, wild.
It's awesome. No, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, everyone's getting those kinds of things. Hold on. I'm going to say it.
All right,
Go away.
Go
away. I'm going to say it. I got it. Where is it?
Yeah.
Where is it? Stim injectors. No. No! Why is the page ended? Load faster!
Before stim injectors.
No. Stim injectors are something different. We're talking about the thermoneutronic projector.
Oh, it's
That's
neutronic. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well, I ballsed it up anyway. Sorry. I'll just stop talking from now on.
So you can put this on a commander or crisis model, and it replaces their flamer. So 12-inch range, typical flamer stuff. Assault D6 plus 2, because Altar flamers are D6 plus 2 for some reason. Strength 4, AP 2 damage, and it can be used in melee.
The AP2 is also super strong. Like AP2 flamer is
and the 2 damage makes it really tasty against Marines and things.
And
then, as Bailey is saying, you can use it in combat, not just as the battle suit you can shoot in combat, but as a melee attack.
Yep, and it's still the D6 plus 2 melee attacks.
Yeah.
And pretty much whenever you're firing this...
But you get that on top of your normal attacks as well.
Yeah.
Whenever you're firing it, though, also, it'll be neg 3 if you're Montcar.
Very oftenly, yeah.
Which, well, because it's 12-inch, right?
Yep.
So
So it's 18, 12, and 9. So in turn 3, which is probably where you're more likely to be getting into combat, it can get a bit rough in terms of everything. But once you're in fighting, in melee, as long as you're in Montcar, it probably will be on.
So I wanted to clarify that too, because I've heard people talk about it a bunch in the lead up to the codex, and every time someone said it, they were like, "Oh yeah, you can shoot it in melee as well." I'm like, "Well, of course you can. That's what all the battle suits do now."
You can fight with it.
I don't understand this. Like, no. You make the same number of attacks on top of your normal attacks with the shooting profile
additionally
during melee.
So you might be wondering what's the downside, and the downside is, unlike a traditional flamer, you have to roll to hit with this one. Whether that's just something that they've forgotten to include because the prototype systems page is pretty tight, or whether it's something that they actually intended, who knows? But yeah, you still have to roll to hit. In shooting with a commander, you're hitting on 2s. In fighting with the commander, you're hitting on 3s. So pretty consistent still.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a quick one on Montcar. Is it in your shooting phase only? So if you're... that's the first part of the question. Is it in your shooting phase only?
No, because it does apply to charges.
So does it apply to Overwatch, yeah?
Let's take a peek at the rule, wherever it is.
I want to say it's ranged attacks.
But in Overwatch, you're making a ranged attack, right? So it's more...
Exactly, yeah.
What phase?
I'm saying that, I'm going to go find where this is.
Again, it makes a ranged attack against the closest enemy unit. So yeah, you wouldn't get it on the melee profile, but you would get it on the shooting profile.
Yeah, so you get it in Overwatch.
Yep.
So you just plus 1 AP in Overwatch, period. Pretty much.
Yep. Which is actually one of the things that I teched into in my RTT list, which was not super tooled up, just because it didn't have the models, and if you try to go buy Tau models at the moment, you'll probably notice that they're sold out everywhere, for good reason. So I was playing...
Especially here in Australia.
Yeah, so I was essentially just playing with like stuff that I'd had for my 8th edition competitive armies. So I took 2 Riptides, because that's what I had. But I teched them up to be those like charge targets, so they were the things that people would want to sort of tap into. They're not core, so you don't need to worry about putting them up to get rerolls from your commanders and stuff. They could operate fairly independently. They've got a 2-up, 4-up invuln save. They're T7 with 14 wounds, and they can give themselves 5-up feel no pains every turn. So they can be super tanky. I didn't even take them with drones because it didn't have the points, but you give them the burst cannon, which is 12 shots, AP 2 damage. Yep. You give them early warning override, which allows them to overwatch on a 5-up for free. You give them target lock so that they're ignoring cover. And then you give them... what was the other one I gave them? They can have like a million different things. This is why I'm forgetting what they're called. Velocity tracker, which gives them +1 to their hit roll.
Against fly.
Against fly.
Isn't it just against fly? Yeah.
Yep, against fly. But custody bikes are everywhere. So
true.
Essentially, this happened in my 3rd game, against one of the other sort of top players at the tournament, who was playing Custodes, essentially moved
Yes.
up a unit of bikes to charge one of my Riptides, and then deep struck in a Galatas Terminator to charge. Obviously dropped the plus 2 inches to charge roll, so that Terminator couldn't make his charge in, and got to overwatch the bikes on 5-ups. Hitting on 5s, wounding on 3s, re-rolling 1s at AP 3, which puts them onto their invuln 2 damage each. Killed 2 of the bikes in Overwatch. Then tank all of the 1 bike's attacks on my 4-up invuln, and then kill him in shooting in my next turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'll actually say is probably a good thing about the book as well is that Riptides are one of the things I was going to bring up as a good point, in that they don't feel as busted as they could have been. Played against Lockie's one the other day, and you'll see that as well. It doesn't really like it has firepower, but it's not the oppressive levels that I'm used to from 6th and 7th.
Okay, I didn't use it like Bailey used it, FYI.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing with it.
But
So probably
also...
I'm listening to this going, oh man, Bailey, we should have chatted before I played this game. Because I probably could have put the hurt down.
Their points cost currently is 120 base. Sorry, 240 base.
Yeah.
And you're going to be putting stuff on them. You're going to be taking up to probably 260, 270 at least.
Yeah, so mine were 250.
250. All right, so there you go. That feels good.
Still a lot of points
for what they do.
That's a lot of points for something that's not core.
Especially if you have 2 of them that are that's 500. That's a quarter of your army.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're sinking a lot of points into them, and they're not
doing anything.
Well, they can do stuff, but it feels like it's worth the 250 points and not you're getting a 300 point model for 200 kind of thing.
Yeah,
they feel well pointed as opposed to maybe broadsides, which could be a little bit more expensive or stuff like that.
It's what I was talking about at the start, where it's like you could nerf Crisis and you just sort of pivot. Riptides become better value because
because they're not bad value now. They're just other things in the book that are better value.
Yeah.
I mean, breaches need a points increase, surely.
Oh, not a big one. Just
a point per model. A point per model.
So I will jump in on that point, and I'll say there's 2 issues with the Tower book as far as I see it. Or there's 2 separate categories of issues. There's what's competitively...
Before we jump into issues, sorry to cut you off.
No, go for it.
Before we jump into issues, we'll have a quick break and hear from Dice Arcade.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll come back and let you talk about some of the things that could be fixed in the book.
Coming right up.
DiceArcade.com.au. All the biggest brands of miniatures and wargaming. Free postage over $250.
All right, thanks for that one, Tim. Yes, now Bailey, you were saying about the 2 issues you had with the book.
So it's not 2 issues; it's 2 categories of issues, and the first category is what is the meta busting, broken stuff, and then what is just the feels bad at a local game, having a game with your mates, and the stuff that's top of the meta broken is stuff like Allied Farsight getting 2 commanders and Ethereal still.
Yeah. It's clearly something janky that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's there means that at a tournament, by all means, go nuts with it, and definitely sort of pulling some stuff that shouldn't be happening in the book.
Yeah, so it's that, it's drop zone clear, it's the price of... It's basically everything that's Crisis related is sitting there, as well as
Even
the Bodyguard shenanigans.
Yeah.
As well as the Bodyguard shenanigans, because we haven't even talked about Crisis Bodyguards. But they have, the typical can't target a command, can't target a HQ if they're within 3 sort of stuff, which means, again, you're putting a big shooty commander out in the open to shoot whatever they want, and then putting something behind a wall with out of line of sight shooting. Fucking retarded. So there's all that sort of stuff, and I think that's the kind of stuff I'm not really too worried about. If it gets nerfed, who cares? And I think it'd probably be better for the health of the game if that did get nerfed. And then there's the feel bad stuff, which I probably want them to address more quickly, and I feel it just needs to be small tweaks. That's the light touch stuff. So breaches, I think, fit into that so well, because breaches are only strong in Devilfish Rush. And Devilfish Rush is only strong because for some reason you get to do it for with 3 models.
3 of them.
And you can set up to do it, and you decide to do it right at the start of the turn. of your turn.
And there's no investment for not doing it.
Yeah.
There's no lost cost for not doing it. Devilfish are still good, and breaches popping out at the normal time are still useful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's like something like that where it's like, oh, if you chose Montcar, do it with 3 for no, like, what? Of course I chose Montcar.
Yeah.
The second one is obviously just Montcar, Calyon in general, which is, like, they're so disparate at the moment. Like, Montcar is just always good.
Yeah.
I kind of, like, I say that.
You mean from the perspective that no one takes Calyon? Is that what you mean, right? Like,
well, Montcar
people only take Montcar? Is that what you mean by that statement?
Montcar is always good because a bunch of other buffs go, if you've selected Montcar, you get this. And those buffs are good, like Exemplar of the Montcar is on all game, reroll all wound rolls if you target something within 12. It doesn't matter if you're in Montcar, it doesn't matter if they're the closest unit, like, you just have that all game. And it's awesome. The Devilfish Rush Strat we just talked about, as long as you picked Montcar, you just get that. And the majority of Tao's firepower is going to come to bear turns 1, 2, and 3. Especially because so much of it is out of line of sight. So there's not, like, really a risk of you not being able to shoot. Yeah. Whereas Calyon, the flip side of it, doesn't come into effect until turn 3, and it doesn't get good until turn 5. So the flip side...
And so just the Devilfish Rush Strat Combat Debarkation, it does work for Calyon as well, but you have to wait until turn 3 to be able to do that for 3 of them.
Those Devilfish and the interior of that is dead by turn 3 in a competitive game.
100%.
So
and
the Devilfish Rush Strat happens with Armored Aggression, which is at the start of the first battle round, but before the first turn begins. If you selected the Montcar Tactical Philosophy, this unit can make a normal move. And you essentially get to then... everyone gets to do it, and then you activate the stratagem to allow everyone to get out.
Gotcha. My apologies. I've missed one of the combos on that one.
So you essentially get to double move your Devilfish and then get out and move and shoot.
Right.
Because you get the pre-game move, right?
Exactly.
Because the Devilfish get the...
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it's called? Sorry, right, yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah, pre-game move 9, then move, then get out, then move, then shoot. Stupid.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, it just feels bad to play against this, like at a local, like at a tournament. Like, and sort of see, if you watch Art of War streams or anything like that, or like I'm sure you guys are probably seeing it with other YouTubers and everything, people aren't even running Devilfish Rush anymore because it's just nowhere near as good as just taking more Crisis.
Yeah.
You know, you get more shooting.
Also, at that point, as Lockie mentioned earlier, for a lot of the stuff like that, you are investing into making that happen.
Yeah.
And at a competitive level, per se, you can punish that as an opponent.
Massively.
And it's like, because I think you're 100% spot on. That's something that is a feel bad at a local pickup game, but at a tournament level, the meta's going to pivot and shift so much, and the fact that you've got to invest in it and put yourself in a position to do it from turn 1 does give your opponent play against it.
Yeah, exactly, and it's also just like something you can really easily go, well, once those breaches get out, they still have to shoot the closest thing in order to actually get all their buffs. So I'll just make sure I'm screening.
Screening really well.
Yeah.
Or you go, that pre-game move that all Devilfish have, they can't go within 9... They can't finish their pre-game move within 9 inches of another anymore. So cool, here's my infiltrating unit. Standing out front. Cool, now you can't actually finish your move where you need to be. So you're already hindered. And when you compare that to... just starting your Crisis off the board and coming in turn 1 anywhere you want with Homing Beacon and shooting the whole board, basically. Or when you compare that to Broadsides. And I don't know how you fix Broadsides. I think they're great in the competitive... Like, they feel that they're on the money as far as, like, high-end competitive players concerned. Because they're not...
infantry.
They're not...
This is dumb.
They're not quite as good as Crisis, but they're still solid. But how you fix them without making them completely just non-functional for regular games, I just don't know. And people have been like, oh, you got to drop core, and I'm like, that just kills them. And then people are like, you got to drop infantry, and it's like, they only move like fucking 4 inches.
But it's
or
not.
something.
So that's not the issue. The infantry keyword gives them cover, and they can be in ruins. That's the problem. I think that's why people are a bit, and I agree. I think
I would argue it's either that or, and I'm looking at the data sheet now and thinking about how difficult it was to chew through them in our game.
And I had was 2 shield drones with them. Yeah, it's.
I feel like that. If you're looking at it purely from like a feel bad perspective, I don't mind them having a high save that I've got to get through. Right? They're battle suits. They're big, mech suits. Sure.
They should never get luck.
Look, even that I don't really have a problem with. I think it's the like. I still don't mind the fact that vehicles used to be able to get cover behind if they were more than 50% obscured and stuff. Like, yeah, cover is a physical thing in the way. It's going to add up. As a feel bad thing, I'd go to the 8 wounds almost. Because you're like, oh, this model, which is, yes, bigger than a crisis suit, but not 8 wounds much bigger.
No. I mean, look.
Right? Crisis suits are 4 wounds. If they were 6 wounds, I'm like, all right, that feels about right for their size and for where they are.
So a Carnifex is 9, right? A Carnifex is 9.
Yeah.
You're telling me that the broadside is the same as a Carnifex? No. Like, no way.
Well, no, because it's 8.
Yeah. But yeah. So I think as like a feel bad thing, I feel like that might be where it comes in.
It's the infantry as well. It's the fact that they can move in and out of cover. They can get all the buffs from cover. It's huge, man. 1-up save.
No, it's big, sure, but again,
1-up
if you're talking
save
about
with 8 wounds.
As Bailey was saying, at a competitive point, well, you can still deal with that. As a pickup game where you're going, oh, we're just trying to have a bit of fun with it. You're like, all right, well, that makes sense. And if it's something that, and look, I mean, feel free to disagree with me, both of you, on this one, but in my opinion, the feel bad stuff from a pickup game comes from when stuff doesn't make sense, not from when it's good per se.
Yes, agreed, of course.
And I would argue that it makes more sense for them to get cover than not, because cover is a physical thing in the way of whatever you're shooting at them. Well, and that's the concept of it.
Like I said to you on the weekend, why does a broadside get infantry and a dreadnought doesn't? That's all I'm saying.
Not just a dreadnought. Compare them to a Paragon warsuits.
Oh yeah,
from Sisters of Battle.
Yeah, and it's that's probably a better comparison. Yeah.
It's just like, so with multi-melters, a Paragon warsuit is like 80 points now, I think. So 240 for the whole squad.
Yeah.
And they have 4 wounds, a 2-up save, no invuln. They're
5 wounds,
vehicles.
They're 5 wounds?
No, they're 4 wounds. They've got -1 damage. But yeah, they're vehicles. They're smaller than a broadside. They're vehicles.
Yeah. So
they're literally the same thing. Someone piloting a suit.
Yeah, and do you know what the funny thing is?
I'm entirely with you that they should have like the same suite of rules as far as their category goes. But I actually think that getting cover makes more sense than not.
Yeah.
In this case,
I would much rather them buff Paragon warsuits than nerf broadside.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. And again, yes, maybe they should all have cover, but the problem in the reality is that no vehicles get cover. I.e., you have a proto-similar pseudo-vehicle that is getting cover. That's the problem, right? So let's not try and confuse the game mechanics with what we would like to see and what's actually in front of us.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, the question is, how do we fix it to make it not feel bad, as opposed to how do we fix it from a competitive standpoint?
So
I would argue the feel bad isn't the cover.
So the thing that makes broadsides, I think, feel bad when you're going up against them is similar to what playing against Custodes bikes, why that is a feel bad at the moment. It's because you can't stop them from shooting at you. Like, unless you are literally on the other side of the board standing behind a wall, and even then, they've got SMS to come and get you. The second you step out, like, that broadside can be standing, behind obscuring themselves, and then they'll just move straight up into that cover, as you mentioned, like, turn off obscuring, be able to see everything, shoot the whole board, and it doesn't affect their shooting at all. Because, in Montcar, the first 3 turns, you can move and advance and count as remaining stationary. So that 5-inch move is actually closer to 11.
Well, that kind of answers your question, I think, there in that point, is that Montcar seems to, like, in the things we've just mentioned, right? Breaches,
Montcar is
broadsides,
broken.
Montcar is the issue, right? Like, that's the common denominator in all the things that seems to be causing problems.
Oh, we haven't even touched on how people are arguing that Montcar allows you to do actions after advancing.
Because the remain stationary thing means that you never have moved. Therefore, that's been FAQ'd in the core rulebook, hasn't that?
I have no idea.
I feel like I read a minute ago. Montcar is you count as remaining stationary in the shooting phase, because otherwise you would also be able to charge and stuff.
I think it's until the end of the shooting phase or something like that. So you can start the action,
Each-
and then as long as you take no other thing.
Huh.
Bum, bum, bum.
Each time this unit makes a normal move or advances in your movement phase until the end of your shooting phase, it counts as having remained stationary.
Bam.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's... So it's each time you make... So essentially, the way I'm reading that...
It'll
is
depend
that
on the action.
You count as having remained stationary from when you move to the end of the shooting phase.
Yep.
Yeah, so
if the
therefore you
action
can move
begins
and then
at
action.
the end of the movement phase, like Pathfinder's doing Markelites, they can advance and then do the action. Or if you're going Banners or Nakmund or anything like that.
So
you can
Markelites
advance
happen at the
and
start
then
of the
do
movement
action.
phase. But yeah,
Pathfinders
Banners,
do it at the end.
any of the secondaries that are action-based, like
you
everything
can,
like that.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, and then
again,
Pathfinders
because
do it at the end of the
of
movement phase.
Tau bullshit, Ethereals can give any, I think it's core, units in their command phase the ability to do actions and shoot. So
And I feel
you
like there's
can-
another way to do that as well.
you can move 18 inches with the Cold Star buff with your Crisis team, do an action and shoot.
So you can be turn 1 R&Ding in your opponent's quarter, still shooting, and then presumably you can then jump with them as well, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, because that's just a strat.
I think that
Yeah,
is
so
make
all
a
the-
normal move, but I'm not 100% sure how that interacts with Stuart's.
It's 6 inches.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, moves 6 inches, but...
Yeah, it's moved 6 inches after you've shot. It doesn't matter about anything. Just after you've shot,
Yeah.
you get to move 6 inches.
Yeah, but
So
I
you
think
can-
that would still
you can-
count as moving, but I'm not
Right.
100% sure how
Well,
that
no,
would
because
interact with actions.
It's still in the shooting phase, and your counter
Yeah.
is remaining stationary.
And the
until
action's
end of your
normal.
shooting phase.
Yeah.
True. Yep. Okay.
So I feel like if you're allowing that jank to begin with, which I think is the way it is written, although probably not intended,
Definitely not intended.
I think you can indeed jump, shoot, jump while doing an action.
So I could be
During-
wrong because I
during
don't
the
have
turn.
the old Tau book in front of me at the moment, but I'm pretty sure the way that Monkar used to be written originally was just it allowed you to advance and fire assault, like move and shoot heavy weapons without penalty, and advance and shoot assault weapons without penalty.
Which is the sort of standard way that rule has worked throughout the... I think they started going onto that in 8th, and that has become the standard in 9th for how that type of rule works.
Yep. So
But also, you would call Monkar, and it would happen for one turn.
and only
and then
units
stop.
within a certain range. Yeah. So the current Monkar is just massive glow up, but I feel like it's because of that just generic remain stationary just allows your heavy rail rifle broadsides to advance and shoot with their heavy inch gun. It allows it's just everything gets it. So it allows long strike to do the same thing. I don't know if you guys ever played against Admech Las Chickens when that book first dropped.
Oh, yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's
pretty
probably the closest comparison to broadsides with rail rifles at the moment is definitely the double las cannon chickens. Because they could
You've got 3 turns of this. You've
Yeah.
got 3 turns of advancing and firing your massive fuck-off railguns as if you haven't, at full ballistic skill. You've got Pathfinders running around dropping down Markelites all over the place you need. So you're hitting on 3s, you're giving yourself all the buffs you need from wherever they are. And there you go.
Yeah.
It's annoying because I really wanted... I mean, look, it's obviously a lot of this stuff is not by intention by Games Workshop and standard Games Workshop, who I'm still going to say it. I think I say it every single podcast. Employ an editor because whoever is your editor, you need to fire because whatever.
Very quickly,
Or it's by design and they don't
remind
care.
Remind me to come back to the book editing point as well. I've got 2 points about the actual book itself.
Yeah, sure.
Continue.
So, obviously, if you play by rules intention, and I don't mean by play by intent at a tournament, because obviously we all do that, but I mean in terms of what does this rule actually mean? Like, come on, let's just be normal
What's it
people.
supposed
Look
to
at these
do?
things logically. Obviously, they're not meant to be saying the whole army can just action for free. And anyone who wants to sit there and argue it, you go, I don't really want to be playing with you. Come on, like, it's a bit over the line. But yeah, it's a hard one to call. It's a really hard, especially as a TO. Like, that's tough. What do you do? I mean, well, in my opinion, it's pretty easy because I'm just like, no, that's stupid. But
But as a TO, I'm like, that's the way they're written, so that's the way it works.
Yeah.
But that's at a tournament specifically.
Oh, that's a hard one. I don't think we'd be ruling that at any of our events, mate. I'd be like, that's fucking retarded. I'd be like, even if that was the rule written, no, because that's broken and that's just dumb.
But I mean, it's a conversation for another time. But I think you've got to worry about precedent there too. But yeah.
Well, only because it's vague, right? That's what I mean. So only because of how generic and vague it is. Yeah. I think you as a TO or you as a person.
The more I read it, the less vague it is. Like, it's clearly not intended, but it's not vague. Vague is not how I describe that.
Mm.
Like, it's very clearly not the spirit of what the rule is supposed to do.
Or it doesn't mention actions, so I would therefore.
But you don't care. It just says you remain stationary. It doesn't say for the purposes of shooting, which has also had precedent in books where they said for the purpose of shooting, you can't remain stationary.
Yeah, and they do that specifically in other books.
Yeah.
And then again, that just comes back to the fact that all the books are written by different teams and different people.
Yeah, which is another...
Again, as why they don't have an editor, because if they did, they would have been like, no, we need to keep consistency and all that stuff. Yeah. So your editor point, quickly.
I'll come back to that once we've finished discussing rules, because it's not about rules. It's about the book itself.
Well, I feel like we've touched on like a bunch of units, but we haven't touched on like half the book. And that's what I mean when I said like you could nerf the shit that's overpowered, and even if you crushed it to the ground, like you'd still be able to make a solid army in this, like out of this.
Let's end on a bit of an up. Please continue.
No, to end on a bit of an up. I fucking love this book. It's amazing. It's so good. It's a little bit overtuned, whether you tune it down in terms of points or whether you tune it down in terms of some of the synergies and like which units can receive them. But the amount of like movement you get, the amount of like shooting that you can actually put out if your opponent, puts their stuff out in the open for you to shoot it. Like it's really, really fun to play. I just wish they'd make it a little bit more fun to play against. That's all I want.
Yeah. And to carry on that point, as Lockie and I have both said, it feels like Tau now play the way they should feel.
Yeah.
They play the way they used to back in like second and fourth. And the way they operate in the fluff can now be better represented on the tabletop. And you're rewarded for doing so. Unfortunately, that is at the detriment of your opponent's enjoyment of the game, often. But it's also not... It doesn't need a whole lot of tweaks to bring it back in line. A couple of key changes or a couple of just adjustments to some of the rules that are out there.
Well, also don't forget, there's still potentially a third of the book still to come out. All these things about charge...
All the Forge World stuff.
All the things about charge... Tyranids will have a lot of charge mitigation. Ignoring all those charge bits and pieces that you have to try and stop it, and not only Tau but Custodes and a few other armies. That's out the window. Fast moving combat armies with demons as well probably will be the counter, right? In terms of not a direct counter to stop them, but in terms of
it'll adjust the meta enough
exactly.
That they're no longer sitting on top.
Well, and if we can talk about future books, I'm sure you guys have probably seen the Tyranid Leaks.
I've read the entire thing like back to front about 7 times.
So we've already seen probably the one that I think's getting everyone fired up at the moment is the change to Hive Guard shooting, which is obviously their big out of line of sight shooting at the moment. According to the leaks, at least now they can only shoot out of line of sight if they have a synapse unit who can see their target.
That's awesome. Also, but it's dropped from strength 8 neg to
they squatted it hardcore. But I mean, like that particular change to how out of line of sight shooting works, I think, is what all out of line of sight shooting needs.
That is and like fluff wise, that's incredible. I think that's a good point. I mean, Bodyguard should have. It's unfortunate the Tyrant Guard changed to be the now current Bodyguard rule, which personally I felt the old one was better, where if you bodyguarded and agree.
Damage was, you can still target that HQ choice, but if that damage goes, you can carry it over.
Yeah, no, the Bodyguard rules are fucked at the moment, and they suck.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid. But there is a lot of jank in books, I think, that are coming out now. There's a lot of durability and stuff that's coming in as well. Like, I look at a lot of the entire Tyranid book and you're going, there's TA and plus 14 wound models with 2-up saves everywhere. Like, the book is littered with it. And you go, okay, cool, that's awesome. the durability, I think, of armies is going to have to go up, and it should. I mean, we saw it with Custodians too, right? Because everything was just getting so killy. But then also in this, it's jank and movement and weirdness, where if you can, as I'm sure, as we've been hearing from you Bailey, that the more you can be everywhere, the more efficient you can be with stuff, right? You can put your opponent on the back foot. You can position yourself better. You can control the flow of the game. And I think you're going to see a lot of the books that are still to come. I think CSM is going to have parts of that. I think it definitely does have that. Demons are going to have that probably even worse than anyone else. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff to go.
I'm excited specifically for CSM for that because their range is so big to begin with.
Well, yeah, very similar.
Because it's almost like Space Marines just with spikes on. So they've got that massive range of units and options. And if you get that, give it the new 9th edition book treatment where it's all becoming usable and even aggressively usable. It'll give you so many options and flexibility for it that you can do exactly what you're saying, where you've got an answer for everything.
I mean, people are going to complain about Tau right up until they play against new Elder, and especially like a new competent Elder player. Like, that shit is crazy in that book. But I mean, more to your point about like, I'm fine with things getting more killy, and I'm fine with things getting more durable. I think where you start to see issues is where you see like things becoming less interactive. So Tau, out of line to start shooting, is through the roof in that book, and that's not interactive for your opponent. They've got move, shoot, move. It's not interactive for your opponent. New Elder have fucking move, shoot, move on every unit with whatever that thing is called. It's not interactive for your opponent.
Everything except your vehicles, which can all still get it occasionally.
Yeah. Custodies just being able to go, nope, cool, you don't get to reroll, and I've got 4-ups and 4-ups and 4-ups and 4-ups. And it's like, cool, that's not really interactive for me. Bodyguard, here's my guy, you can't shoot him, ever. Yeah. It's not interactive. Yeah. And it's like, I worry that they're going to keep going down that route.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why I really liked the change they made to Hive Guard, even though they squatted them into oblivion for the points cost. The fact that now does require interacting. Like, you have to actually move your stuff around the board and try to actually, get a line, and your opponent can react to that. Like, I think that's just a much better way for the game to be.
It's a fantastic way to put it,
it is for sure. And I think on top of that as well, unfortunately, where people... I've been watching it too. Everyone's like, oh, I've got it so dead. And you go... Just like when people responded to AdMech, you go, that's not dead. Just you need to work for it now. And in reality with NIDS...
And that's a good place for something to be.
A lot of their stuff with their synaptic links and stuff, like you can... You're pushed into doing that anyway. So I think you're actually going to find players are going to find just as easy to do it than not, because of things like, you can cast powers through synaptic link stuff now, rather than actually being in range. So you can literally have a 64-inch power go off. So there's going to be obviously a change in all the armies that come out with the way their 9th edition kind of treatment goes, which will hopefully just be iteration and iteration and iteration on these kinds of things. To improve the state of the game. And then they might find that, out-of-line sitting's not good enough because everyone can just get at your front door in 2 seconds or whatever. Looking at Tyrannocytes that, anyway, there's just going to be ways. And I think that's what kind of gives me hope for all this stuff moving forward, is that they're not doing these blanket just, I'm releasing something that's going to be stupid for 12 months, that the release cycle is quick enough that it's forcing, you have your time in the sun with maybe your one broken thing, and whether it's by Games Workshop or by the community, people will find a workaround and it'll sort of calm it back down for a period. I think that's great. It's a great place for everything to be in at the moment currently, I think.
Yeah.
It's a very positive outlook.
Well, it got to be, otherwise it's just depressing and being too negative all the time.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's a hobby. It's a game. We do it to have fun and relax, and means we've got to be positive. Like my boys, the Vespid. The one last thing I wanted to mention is, as far as rules go, Vespid. Yes,
super good.
Well, the gun profile is pretty good, right?
Yeah,
it's like 18-inch strength 5, neg 3, 2 damage.
They're
like
usable
awesome.
Now. I'm gonna bring 2 of them when I bring the list in a couple of weeks' time. Because you've got, as you're saying, like, yeah, sure, they're a T4 1 wound 4-up chassis with a 14-inch movement and inbuilt deep strike. And their gun is 18 inches, assault 2, strength 5, -3, 2 damage.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Hitting on 4s, sure, but there's ways to mitigate that. And they're 12 points a model.
And also, everyone, we will be bringing a Kroot army to Risky Rollers at some point.
I mean, you're making big promises there. I'm painting.
I said
20
some point.
20 in a shaper currently.
I said some point.
I'm gonna be back to chaos after that. But
I didn't mean anytime soon. I just said at some point. We're gonna put 150 Kroot on the table and just be like 150. Here you go. We should go Kroot to Hormers and have a game.
That'd be hilarious.
Like 200 v 200. See if we can get 400 models on the table.
Yeah, I mean, Vesper don't benefit from Moncar, which is the one bad thing, but...
With AP3 inbuilt, they don't need to. And 14-inch move.
It's the reroll ones that won't.
And I guess the advance and no penalty shoot, right? That would be pretty handy.
They move 14 inches in deep strike innately already.
Yeah, they're super good.
And there is a way you can put them in Montcar with I think it's Dalith Sept.
Yeah, one of the Septs allows you to have auxiliaries.
Auxiliaries, yeah.
But Kroot Carnivores, like, also just, they slap. They've got a pre-game move, they normal move 7. You know, they've got a bolt rifle, they've got a bolt gun for their shooting profile. They've got bloody choppers for their melee profile.
And you can make them heroically intervene, which is hilarious.
Yeah, so they're cheaper than boys, and Orc boys, and they're better than boys in pretty much all ways.
6 points each. And then Kroot Hounds, also 6 points each, with 3 -1 damage attacks, with up to 12 of them in a unit. And they all get pre-game moves as well.
It's crazy good. I like it. I've always said that I wanted Kroot to become good again. Make Kroot good again, and they made Kroot good again. So good on them.
All we need now is more auxiliaries. That's all I want for town now.
Guard. It's cool if you could take guard in, because there are humans in.
Oh yeah, the Gil Evasa.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that pretty much sums up thoughts on the rules and things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else to say on that side of things?
No, I think that's there's definitely more to the book that we haven't talked about, but I think that's a really good sort of like coverage on some of the really cool things, some of the really annoying things. Yeah. There's nothing like bad in this book that I've seen. Like, you could take pretty much any unit and you're going to have a good time with it. Yeah. Whether your opponent has a good time, that's, Yeah. What I'll just say is, if, pick your list based on where you're playing. If you're going to a tournament, go nuts, have fun. It's probably not going to last, so get in while you can. If you're going to your friendly local game store, maybe tone it down a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe try out that Carrion list you've been thinking about.
Exactly.
Which we didn't talk about, but I just wanted to point out I do like Carrion, and yes, Montcar is so much better, but at the same time, I might give Carrion a try out at some point because it does sort of suit how I want to play him. But anyway. Yeah.
Take your 200 Kroot to your friendly local game store, everybody. Do it. Infuse your inner Lockie and do it. It's awesome. And then take a photo and send it to me because I'll be like, bro, props.
Post that shit on the Risky Rollers Discord.
That's it, 100%, because I want to see that. That'll be so... And then actually tell me beforehand so I can come and meet you. Yeah. And be like, you're a fucking legend.
But yeah. So, the one very, very quick... two very quick things about the book I wanted to mention. First one, very important. The books didn't have bookmarks.
Oh, yeah.
And then for Custodes and Genes of the Cults, they did. And now they don't again.
Yeah.
So just randomly, 2 of the codices, bookmarks. And then never again.
Well, COVID,
do you mean like tabs or something? Or?
Yeah, no, like actual...
no, the actual, actually inbuilt fabric bookmarks.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. Genes, the Cults and Custodes books have them. None of the others do.
Which is really handy.
They're really good, actually.
When you go from book without it, then you go to a book to it, and then you go back, and I've gone to grab the bottom part of the book, and just grab my arm and been like, what the... Oh,
well, we've both
doesn't have one.
We both noticed it when we're filming. We're like, I can't mark this page anymore.
Yeah, it sucks.
I mean, that just seems to be a GW thing lately. Like, when they first put out Chapter Approved, the first one for 9th, and it was like ring bound and everything else, and I was like, oh, this is lovely and great. It has the
So
rules,
much
it's got the
easier.
missions,
Yeah.
and now each one has just gotten slightly less, and now the Knackmund one is like it's
bad.
tiny, like missions only, no rules, no ring binding, no nothing. And it's just
look,
like, that's still
give it-
$70,
give it another-
thanks.
Give it another couple of books, and it'll be like 3 pamphlets and like just a written out link you got to type in to get to an online FAQ.
Yeah, it's a $70 PDF. It's like not even in the app.
Yeah.
It's like PDF only. Download, print it yourself. And it's like you compare that to the AOS General's Handbook or whatever, and oh my god, that thing is so nice. It's like tabbed out, like it's, and it's like hard covered, and it's so nice.
Yeah. And the editing point I wanted to make was if you've watched either of our codex reviews for Gene Stealer Cult of Custodes, you'll notice that we picked up on just the way
the
pictures are
bad
laid
editing
out on data sheets.
The bad photoshopping.
It is incredible to look at. Not
They've done
only
it
are
again.
several, it's worse here. Like even
Wow.
I think it's even worse than the Eldar book, which was pretty bad. Which we'll come on to if you check out that codex review. But not only are a bunch of the models in different set schemes throughout the datasheet section, like there's some in Viola, there's some in Tau, there's one randomly, the Skyray in Sasea.
That looks
some
awesome.
I
reason.
think that's by design, though. I mean, I'm not saying it's a good
No,
design.
it's
I'm
not
just saying
consistent. Like it's not
Yeah.
like it's
just
it's
not
not like
made
there's a
it.
consistent thing.
They've
Characters, I get it, because they're named and they go in certain ones. But then it's like, most of it's Viola, because that's like the current kind of quote-unquote poster boys for Tau. And then they clearly, no one's painted a Firesight Marksman in Viola set. So they've had to use the Tau one they've got. Apparently no one's painted Vespid since like 4th edition, because they're in Tau set.
Yeah, bad.
The Hammerhead gunship apparently is still in Tau. The Skyray gunship, yeah, Sasea. It's the only one not in Tau or Viola. Just randomly, I guess no one painted one in the updated color schemes. Both the flyers, and then the Tidewall, all 3 Tidewall bits, the gun rig, shield line, and drone port, they're all in technically Viola, but they're either painted by someone different and or the pictures of them are taken in different lighting, and it's really, really obvious.
I mean, the one that gets me up is the Sunshark Bomber, if you take a look at that. So,
Yeah,
like,
which is...
if you look at it's one of the Tau flyers, right? And so it's right, for people who can't see this, it's right next to the page for the Razor Shark Strike Fighter, which is the other Tau flyer,
Yeah.
which just has a
Both built from
picture...
the same kit.
Yep.
Same chassis.
Which just has a picture of the plane, right? Like, you can clearly see it's
Yeah.
got wings and a body. The Sunshark Bomber is like a picture from underneath, looking at, like, the exhaust port, which I guess is probably where the bomber part of the weapons profile is.
It's looking at the bomb itself, like the bomb generator, but
It is literally looking up the butt of the plane and going like, it's a plane, by the way. It's like, you have no idea what that is. That could be anything.
yeah. But also,
I never noticed that. That
it's
sounds
also
hilarious. I
even
really
more
want to see that.
hilarious because the main thing we noticed about these, and if you flip through a few of them, Bailey, and have a look, the photoshopped images of the models themselves are inconsistently poking in and out of the frames.
Yeah.
So it's like foreground, background, midground. You're like,
Yeah.
pick one, yeah?
But
Just pick
like,
one
in
and
weird
stick to
spots,
it.
too. So, for example, the Ghost Keel, everything about that model is behind the frame, right? The frame is the entire edge of it. And then directly across from it, you've got the Firesight Marksman with like 2 antennas sticking out of the frame. And then you've got the Skyray gunship has the entire front of it sticking out of the frame.
It's like everything
Part
but
of-
one
Everything but one of the main like
engines.
back engine bits sticking out of the frame, including things that are in real life directly vertically above bits cut off.
Yeah, and then you compare that to the Devilfish, where everything is out.
Yeah, the entire thing's been plonked directly on top of the frame. Then you've got the Razor Shark Strike Fighter has like the front wingspan and the front gun sitting outside the frame and the back of it going back into it, like it's coming out of a hole that's too small for it. And then you've got the Sunshark Bomber with its weird ass shot of the plane, entirely within the frame.
So I stand by this before you continually,
funny.
it's hilarious, but I still stand by this. They don't have an editor. Or, to be honest, no one's actually pulled Games Workshop on the fact of this little detail, and they've just got away with it for this long.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they're
this
just
does
like,
not...
don't tell anybody.
The Crisis Battlesuits page has the Crisis Battlesuit with his gun sticking out into the datasheet. Now, it's a fusion gun, and it's not only out of the frame, but over the top of the datasheet, right? Not covering any words, but over the top of like the datasheet bit, with the bottom corner of it randomly like cut off diagonally. But then not only that, but across the page are Kroot Carnivores and Krootox Riders with all their weapons hidden behind the datasheet.
Yeah.
And
so 100% an intern 10 years ago, right?
And then you've got what?
When they decided to do it this way instead of the little hand drawings they used to do, right?
Yeah.
When they used to do the little concept art
Yeah.
images or whatever. Some interns just been like, hey, this would be a good, cheaper idea, guys. We just take a whole bunch of photos and then you don't ever have to do this shit again. And they're like, that's fucking awesome. We're going to keep doing that. And then they're like, no one's fucking noticed. Well, yeah, so they just, it's just an intern job. There you go. It's an intern job.
Oh my God.
And the information is just going to be, we don't care what you do. Just get it out. And then he or she is going to be like, yeah, sick, whatever.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. I actually love this now that you've pointed out to me. Like, I hadn't even thought about it, but now that I've
I know, right?
Now I'm like, this is actually fantastic. This is my favorite thing in the book.
There's
you're going to look at every book now and you're going to be like, no, they're still doing it.
Wait, I can go and check other codexes and we can...
Oh, I have.
We've
hilarious.
done it. We've gone over GSC. We've gone over Custodies.
Yeah.
It was
fucked. I had Charlie here at my house playing a game the other day, and I opened the Eldar book for the first time. Like, I bought the new book. It was the first thing I looked at.
Yeah,
I'm like,
now it's in your head.
I'm like, it smells fantastic. How do the pictures look in the data sheets?
See, for me, the big thing that I
yeah.
wish they'd change about their codexes is just put the Crusade rules somewhere else.
Like in front of or behind the special rules.
It's like
not in the middle of them.
No, on top of that, actually, if we're talking about this, and this is actually a point I actually do want to point out.
Yeah.
Please put your points back on the data sheet.
Yeah. Why would they take it away?
I'm sorry, but your points at the back get fucked. I never look at that book. I will wait until it gets put into Battlescribe before I will go through and do it manually. But if it was on the data sheet and it was easy for me to use, I probably would. I mean, probably not, but I might. I might think about doing it. So it's just good to know sometimes if I want to be like, well, actually, if I'm writing a list in my head, just kind of close, like not doing it exactly like, I might have a spare like 200 points here, like they used to be. Whip the book open, there's the data sheet.
Yeah.
I should have every piece of information I need about this model if I want to use it in my army. That's
It
like
just
design
randomly
101,
changed
right?
at the start of 8. They're like, oh yeah, now all the points.
So just at the back, and you're like,
Yeah.
and then also not all the. And I know sometimes this is a little bit harder based on weapon options available to every unit, but the fact that they won't show the weapon option stats that's available for every model.
Worse than
right,
they don't
data sheet.
show all the points at the back. All those pay for points upgrades, they're not with all the other points.
No, I know there's that too. But I mean, if say I want to see the stat of a generic weapon on say something. Sometimes it's not in the actual data sheet. I have to go to the weapons part of the book to then look up the stat of that weapon. And you're like, no.
It used to be like that for any weapon that wasn't the default loadout. But then you just had that bit of the book open because that was where all the weapons were.
Yeah.
Not where half of them were.
So you've got bits here, you got bits there. I mean, it's all that. Even we've spoken a little bit internally, not publicly about the Eldari one where it's like, Lawrence and I were talking about it last week, where you've got the stratagems. It's not grouped. So it's not like you have all the Harlequin strats, then all the Eldari strats, then all the thing strats. They're just everywhere in it. And you're like, why?
The last 2 pages are just Harlequin strats.
Oh.
Yeah.
Also,
the strat groupings is another horrendous thing as well.
Their continued push for this, Battle for... Oh, sorry, what are they calling them? They're calling them, They're not even... Battle Tactic Stratagem, Epic Deed Stratagem.
Yeah. Who cares?
Strategic Ploy,
Put them in phases. Group them in phases, please.
Yeah, please just give me movement stratagems, shooting stratagems, like.
Or and if you're gonna categorize them by a metric, i.e., a cost. So all strategic ploys are fucking 1 CP, or all or something like that makes some kind of logical sense.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's like how, and this is the other issue where you have like, why does my reroll wound strat cost 1 and your reroll wound strat cost 3? You're like, I don't know. It just fucking does. You know, like there needs to be stratagems in general are probably the biggest design failure of 40k. 100%. It is one of them
from a design standpoint. Yeah,
it's one of the biggest issue. It is the biggest issue of the game, barring the entire, I do everything, you do everything issue, which is probably never going to change. But
even that's not inherently as big of an issue as stratagems are.
Yeah, stratagems are a problem. But if you were to just tweak it by going, okay, let's standardize it in a way where it's like, all right, they all cost 1, 2, or 3, and these are the categories, and they just set their obviously they need to design it. They'll actually put some effort into designing it in terms of what all our killy ones are 2, or whatever whatever it is they want to do. Something needs to be done from that perspective. Probably moving into 10th, and I hope they do. I hope maybe someone at Games Workshop happens to listen to this and go, "Oh yeah, we've been thinking about that," or whatever. They need to put in a little bit more thought into stratagems as a general, and they have tweaked it since 8th to 9th, right? There have been some significant tweaks previously, but now we're at the point where the things that are making books broken 9 times out of 10 is what the stratagems are doing.
Yeah.
If you took a bunch of stratagems away from custodies, they wouldn't be as problematic as they are, right? Even Tau, really, as well. You could take a few of them and probably wouldn't be as bad touch. I know we were seeing Monkara is a little bit worse, but that's something that needs to be addressed, I think, moving forward. I mean, look, you're not going to get an answer anytime soon, but hopefully.
You should try playing AOS. They've used to have like a huge thing with like command points and command abilities as well, and they've really...
The way AOS do command abilities, yeah.
For 3rd edition, they've really like streamlined the system. And some areas it's like they've gone too far, but for the most part I think it's great. Like you only get 3 command points a turn. You regen them every battle round.
Yeah, it's a pool, right? I like that.
Yep. Everything costs 1 CP to do. And there's a whole bunch of universal stratagems that everyone has access to.
Yeah.
So you don't have to like memorize, like every army's unique abilities. Like there's a few unique abilities obviously still, but for the most part, like everything that a unit can do is either on their battle sheet or in the core rules. On their war scroll, they're called in AOS.
Yeah, they're done shit.
Yeah. Just as an aside, the drone section of the book is hilarious for this editing thing.
It's also so ambiguous. I remember I asking you questions, right? I'm just like, so how do drones work? And you're like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know either, man.
To be fair, that's because you had the book and you're the one there reading it. I'm like, you've got my book. Like,
and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, so how do they operate in terms of, I don't know. This is one of those times where I like kind of wanted them to spell it out very, second grader style for me, because I was like, I have no idea how these work.
They're part of. You have to take them as part of a unit. You usually get 2 per other non-drone model that you're taking them with. They remain as part of the unit unless you use a stratagem, in which case they become their own thing, and then they can't really do anything once they become their own thing. You still have to roll your wounds against the toughness, like the highest toughness in the unit. So if you're shooting a crisis unit, you roll against the T5 for your wound roll. And then once you have done your wounds, the tower player allocates wounds, and they can choose to allocate 2 drone models or 2 other models in the unit. And it just follows the same
rule. Normal.
Yep.
So that needs to be written.
That is written.
Where?
In the drone section?
Actually, now that you said
the drone section?
I'm really nervous that it's not going to be written.
Because I read that drone section and it is not there.
Well, but to be fair, it's just because you've got mixed profiles in a unit. The mixed profiles in a unit rules are uncommon, but they are a main bit of the core book.
There is a whole section that they have dedicated of their book to specifically drones, right? put in a paragraph that just states how this functionally works.
It's nowhere near as clear as what I just said.
Yeah, not at all. And the way you're saying, I'm like, yes, cool. I didn't. Yep, mad. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Put that in there. It's a key component of an army's functionality. I don't care if you've written it in your core book. Do it again. Like, I went in there as a literally brand new Tau player, going, I want to know how drones work, and I was like, I have no idea how drones work. And I asked people how do drones work. They're like, it's in the book. I'm like, no, it's not. And that's a problem. That's a very, very big problem. Anyway, I was just butthurt because it made me look like an idiot. Really.
I mean, look, to be fair, it was all off camera until you decided to bring it up here.
No, I know. No. But, like, in all seriousness, it was just one thing that I had a little bit of gripe on because, usually they're either super ambiguous or overly, like, dumbing it down. But it's still there. Where this one, I was like, well, this is actually just not even here. Like, how these drones function. Because there's so many of them, too. You're kind of like, this drone has this. Okay, but how does that actually work in relation to other things? Anyway, it was just small. I don't want to hype on it too much because we've now been going for a very long time.
Yeah, I think that's getting a little into the weeds when we're criticizing, how images are displayed and how the drone rules are written. But yeah, I mean, how rules are written is always going to be an issue in 40k. It's so complicated, and as we've seen, if they don't try to be as like specific as possible, people just go, "Oh, well, you didn't say I couldn't do that." Like you did.
Yeah. Well, there's a cultural problem though too, right? It's a two-pronged thing where you got because to be honest, there's other games that are more complicated.
It's just a symptom of trying to move the game into a more competitive sense. Because at a competitive level, you do game all the little things you can get out of it. Whereas at a friendly sort of garage hammer level, you do go, we know what this rule's supposed to do, so we'll play it like that.
Yeah. I just know that I've played games. There's games out there that are more complicated and are easier to understand than Games Workshop, and that's purely because the more 9th edition is going on and the more I'm involved with it at the current level, I'm realizing that they deliberately write their rules the way they're doing. Everything by them is by design. And that is, there is... Nothing is by accident. Literally, that's my personal opinion on this, is that nothing they do is by accident. They deliberately write shit wrong. They deliberately do things the way they're doing, because it's just for whatever reason.
But, I mean, I'm not surprised when you've got like a team of however many different people. It's probably only like a handful of people to write a book that is 140 odd pages. That there's going to be a sentence or two in that book
that'll break it,
that are written incorrectly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in the most cases, that sentence is fine. No one gives a shit. And then in the one case where it applies to one super special rule, and suddenly it just means that everything is broken, like the remaining stationary until the end of your movement shooting phase, as opposed to in your next shooting phase.
Yeah.
It's
or
like
for the purposes of shooting attacks,
But the severity of that, and the fact that, hey, our mistakes carry more weight than, say, someone misprinting or instead of, right? In terms of, say, any other publication. That, for me, means it carries more weight. Therefore, they need to be stricter on how they edit and they structure their books. That is...
I want to throw out there as well, it's not having a go at the specific people who are writing these, because I imagine that there's, as Burley mentioned, like a small team of them who are like, and there's someone higher up the chain going, you've got 3 of these to do in the next few weeks, we can get them out to printers, so, hurry the fuck up with your books.
Pick your poison. You blame the editor, you blame the company as a whole, right? Whoever. The person, the people, the everything that is Games Workshop that produce the product that we buy, i.e. 9 times out of 10 here in Australia, spending $70 plus $80, $90 on an inferior product every time, right?
Yeah.
That's just not good enough. I'm sorry, but it just isn't.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at, although their stock price has been plummeting lately, but if you look at how much fucking money GW makes, generally speaking, it's like, they can afford to hire editors.
Another editor, yeah.
Even just a team whose entire job is to make sure that all the books are compliant.
Yeah, exactly. Keep some level of standard, put it into place.
It's like they're completely separate from the actual rules writer, so they don't have to come up with rules or anything like that. Their job is just to make sure that, hey, you're referring to this kind of rule. It sounds like this other kind of rule you've used before. Are they the same? Are they intended to be the same? Okay, they are. Cool. We're just going to change all the language to make sure that they're the same.
Exactly, 100%. That's
Absolutely.
a perfect way of putting it, and that's all they need. Literally, it probably costs them an extra $100,000 a year to employ someone to do that. Like,
Probably, yeah.
you know what I mean? Anyway, let's leave on a high note by saying
and the
Cow was good.
The other thing is, I'll say is,
and for the love of God, find Timmy the editor, Timmy the intern, who's in charge of editing in these pictures, and beat him around the head,
and give him a raise because his work is
That was a good. That was a good high note, guys.
Yeah.
Well, thanks Bailey for coming on and talking everything Tau. And
no, thanks for having me. Always great to be back.
Awesome.
For sure. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for chatting with me, Lockie, and thank you all of you wonderful people for listening. We hope to catch you guys next time. Make sure to check out the battle report that came out today. There's of course Lockie and I playing the new Eldar and the new Tau books.
Sorry, Tau players. Just if you haven't watched it,
and to be fair, sorry, Eldar players. Like I'm sure I missed a buttload of stuff in that. Check that one out, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.